Hey, what's up, football fans? Welcome back to the channel. NFL Cowboys news. We've got some huge NFL news today, courtesy of Adam Schefter himself. If you're a Cowboys fan, or just an NFL fan in general, buckle up because this could change the entire landscape of the league. Adam Schefter has just dropped a bombshell on a potential blockbuster trade that could see some major names: Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Micah Parsons, and even Myles Garrett shuffling around in the NFL. This trade involves some of the biggest stars in football right now, and it's got us all on the edge of our seats wondering, is this the real deal? Will we see the Dallas Cowboys make a move that could reshape their roster, or will another team swoop in? In today's video, we're going to break down every angle of this trade, what it could mean for the Cowboys, and why the NFL world is buzzing. So make sure you stick around till the end, because you don't want to miss any of this. Let's dive right in. So, here's the deal. Adam Schefter, the most trusted voice in NFL insider news, just dropped a massive hint about a potential trade that could go down, and it's got all of us scratching our heads. We're talking about the possibility of a trade involving some of the most important players in the NFL today. Let's break this down piece by piece. Now, when you see these names, you have to stop and think, what in the world could bring these four players into one potential trade? I know, it sounds crazy, but that's exactly what Adam Schefter is hinting at in his latest report. According to him, there's a possibility that a trade involving all of these players could reshape the NFL as we know it. First up, we have Russell Wilson. This is a guy who needs no introduction. Wilson has been a staple of the Seattle Seahawks for over a decade, leading them to a Super Bowl victory in 2013 and keeping them competitive year in and year out. However, in recent seasons, we've seen the Seahawks struggle to put together a winning formula, and Wilson has become vocal about his frustrations with the franchise. We all remember last offseason when Wilson made some noise about wanting out of Seattle. There were rumors that he could be traded to the Chicago Bears or even the New Orleans Saints. But, at the end of the day, Wilson stayed put. However, the situation in Seattle hasn't gotten any better. The Seahawks are a team in flux, and Wilson could still look for a fresh start. This trade could be the perfect opportunity for Wilson to get a change of scenery. And we all know how much the Cowboys have been flirting with the idea of bringing in a big-name quarterback to take them to the next level. If the Cowboys were to land Wilson, they would instantly have a quarterback who's been to the Super Bowl and can perform at the highest level. Think about it, Wilson paired with a loaded offense that already features Ezekiel Elliott, CeeDee Lamb, and a strong offensive line. Suddenly, the Cowboys become an even bigger threat in the NFC. But there's a lot to consider here. Would the Cowboys be willing to part with the assets it would take to get Wilson? That's where the next player comes in. Speaking of quarterbacks, let's talk about Aaron Rodgers. Now, this one is a little different. Rodgers is already 40 years old and has said repeatedly that he wants to finish his career with the Packers. However, his relationship with Green Bay management has been rocky at times, and every offseason, we're left wondering, is this the year Rodgers gets traded? Rodgers is coming off yet another MVP season, and despite the Packers' playoff heartbreak, he remains one of the league's most dangerous quarterbacks. His ability to perform in clutch situations, combined with his insane accuracy and leadership, make him an attractive trade candidate for any team with Super Bowl aspirations. Imagine if the Cowboys could swing a deal to bring Rodgers in. With Rodgers under center, they would immediately become one of the favorites to win the NFC, if not the entire Super Bowl. Rodgers would have a fantastic supporting cast around him, and given his pedigree, you'd have to think that he could get the Cowboys over the hump. Of course, the Packers would likely ask for a lot in return for Rodgers, and it's uncertain whether the Cowboys would be willing to make that kind of trade. But in the world of NFL blockbuster trades, anything is possible. So, could we see Wilson and Rodgers move in the same trade? Or could this be an entirely separate deal? Let's keep that in mind as we dive deeper into this trade speculation. Now, let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys side of things, and specifically Micah Parsons. This guy is a stud. He's only in his second year, and he's already considered one of the best defensive players in the league. Parsons took the NFL by storm with his insane ability to rush the passer, drop into coverage, and just wreak havoc on opposing offenses. The Cowboys have built their defense around him, and he's been the centerpiece of their defensive transformation. So, why would they even consider trading him? Well, in a trade of this magnitude, sometimes you have to give up your stars to get even bigger stars. But would the Cowboys be willing to part with the cornerstone of their defense? It would take a king's ransom to pry Parsons away from Jerry Jones, but if it meant landing a superstar quarterback like Wilson or Rodgers, you'd have to wonder if the Cowboys might pull the trigger. Micah Parsons is a generational talent, but in order to bring in a top-tier quarterback who could take the Cowboys to the promised land, the team might have to consider the tough decision of letting him go. Is it worth it? That's a question only Jerry Jones and the Cowboys front office can answer. Now, let's talk about Myles Garrett, the powerhouse defensive end for the Cleveland Browns. Garrett is a monster off the edge, capable of disrupting the quarterback and changing the course of a game with his sheer strength and speed. Garrett has been one of the league's most dominant pass rushers for years, and he's the kind of guy you can build your defense around. So, how does Garrett fit into this trade? Well, we know that defensive players like Garrett don't usually get traded for quarterbacks, but in a blockbuster deal like this, anything's possible. The Cowboys could look at Garrett as a way to beef up their defense even more, and in a trade that involves big names like Wilson, Rodgers, and Parsons, Garrett could be part of the deal that sweetens the pot. If the Cowboys were to add Garrett, they'd be getting an elite pass rusher who could complement Parsons and really transform the defense into one of the league's best. A defense with Parsons and Garrett on the same line would be terrifying for any quarterback, and it might give Dallas the edge they need to make a serious Super Bowl push. So now that we know the players involved, let's talk about the potential trade scenarios. The most likely scenario is that the Cowboys could deal a combination of draft picks, players like Micah Parsons, and possibly even some current starters to land either Wilson or Rodgers. But how does this all shake out? Let's think about a couple of possible trade options. Russell Wilson plus Micah Parsons to the Cowboys in this trade. The Cowboys could send draft picks and some of their young talent to the Seahawks, maybe even Parsons, to secure Wilson. This would immediately upgrade the quarterback position and give the Cowboys a chance to compete for a title with one of the best QBs in the league. Aaron Rodgers to the Cowboys. This one would be trickier. The Packers would likely demand a ton in return, maybe even Parsons plus more, but if Rodgers wants out, the Cowboys could have the leverage to make this deal happen. With Rodgers at the helm, the Cowboys would become instant Super Bowl contenders. Garrett for more defensive help. In a world where the Cowboys land both Rodgers and Wilson in separate trades, Myles Garrett could be the piece that bolsters their defense, creating the most well-rounded roster in the NFL. So, what do you think, guys? Could the Cowboys pull off the biggest blockbuster trade in NFL history? Will we see Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Micah Parsons, and Myles Garrett all change teams in one massive deal? The possibilities are endless, and while we don't know for sure if this will happen, we know one thing for certain: the NFL offseason is going to be wild this year. Let me know in the comments below what you think about these trade rumors. Would you want the Cowboys to go after Wilson or Rodgers? Or do you think they should keep building their defense around Parsons and Garrett? Hit that like button if you enjoyed this breakdown, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any more NFL news and analysis.